Welcome to the Glitch Mob podcast, where we are finding beauty and breakthroughs. And this week's episode, I am sitting here with Laura Richards, and I'm so excited to talk to her because she is the funnest person to talk to. She is an international podcaster, she's an author, and she is recovering from a I guess still recovering, I would say, from
Yeah.
a 32-year marriage to a narcissist.
Yep.
Bless your heart.
Thank you.
So we're going to hit on a bunch of different topics today. We're going to talk about tactics used by the abusers. We're going to talk about abuse recovery, healthy boundaries, phases that you go through when you come out of those toxic relationships. So we're going to hit a lot of stuff. So let's get started.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Let's start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, sure. I don't know what you want me to tell you, but I will tell you a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm Laura. I'm a mom of 3 grown children, and I am an international podcaster, like you said. And I speak on narcissistic abuse. So I'm a narcissistic abuse awareness expert. I speak on that. I write on that. I do my podcast on that. Because after having been with a narcissist for 33 years, we were actually married 32, but together 33. I feel like an expert now. Like I have a PhD in narcissism. And so I just want to help women. And one of the things about me was that I always had wanted to help women in some way. So I was always, like volunteering at church and doing women's tables. And I was always trying to
Mhm.
put coffee dates together and all that kind of thing. So this is such a natural progression for me that out of my pain, I turned my pain into purpose and started a podcast and helping women. My focus is women, even though women can be narcissists and men will get, benefit from our discussion today, but I just talk to women. That's my focus.
And that's a good reminder that there's been several times where people that come out of toxic relationships, they might say to themselves that they regret being in that relationship. But if you turn, like you said, if you turn that pain into purpose, there's a reason that God brought you through that.
Yeah.
He knew you could handle it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing. I'm telling my story and trying to educate other women because
Right.
I do feel like it's a topic that's not talked about enough.
Mhm.
And from my experience, I have a 15-year-old daughter,
Mhm.
and she actually just walked in the front door. How funny is that? But I have a 15-year-old daughter. I don't want her going through it.
Right.
And I
Exactly.
and I see certain um, behaviors in high school students
Yes.
of toxic, narcissistic
Yes.
tendencies.
Right.
So it's happening earlier on, and I think it's something that needs to be talked about and we
Yeah.
need to be aware of.
Well, it comes from emotional neglect. And so if you have these kids, and this was with my ex as well, I can see how it was built. And so I do keep an eye on my kids, but they're good and they're grown. They're 30, 28, and 25. And so we talk about it. They go to therapy, all these things. But it comes from emotional neglect. And so my ex was emotionally neglected by his mother. And if kids don't have that, or they have, well, not just or they also have this competitive parent who you always got to get the best grades and all those kinds of things, you can turn into a narcissist because then you always have to be the best and all that. And
Mhm.
there's no actual love there, right? It's still emotional neglect. You're just going by performance. And so, women turn in, or girls, let's say girls turn into something else. They may have daddy issues. They may look for love in all the wrong places. Men often turn into narcissists and so we'll see that differently in boys and girls. It's so
Right,
interesting.
right. So why don't we start by talking about the tactics used by abusers?
Sure.
Mhm.
Okay, so, well,
Where,
the
where,
pro
where do we start?
where do we start? It's such a web of lies. So, well, what you'll see often is, okay, the biggest thing for me was gaslighting that I saw, and when I'm thinking back, it's the same kinda that's what comes to my mind. So gaslighting is really trying to create this um kind of confusion in, so the narcissist will cause like confusion in the other person, so saying that didn't happen that way, what you're remembering is incorrect, That's not quite right. And even just not making a big deal about you to kind of keep you down so that you kind of start begging for love, and you don't realize you're begging for love because they will give you another tactic, which is giving you a little breadcrumb. So but gaslighting is so to me it's so frustrating. I don't know how many discussions I had with my ex say like, hey, can we do this thing, or like, would you mind not speaking to me that way? I don't do that. I don't,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. I don't even know what you're talking about. That was my favorite. I
Or,
don't
or
even know
here,
what
I'll use this as an example.
yeah.
If if your, I'm going to say spouse, but
Yeah.
it can be a narcissistic relationship doesn't necessarily have to be with spouses. It can be
Yes.
parental, whatever. But
Yep.
I'm going to use the example of your spouse. If your spouse
Yes.
comes in and they smell like smoke,
Yes.
and you say, "Oh, you smell like smoke. Did you have a cigarette?"
Right.
No, I didn't. What are you talking about? I don't smell like smoke. I didn't smoke a
Right.
cigarette.
Right.
You know,
I
and
mean,
then
yeah,
after a while, and you want to believe your spouse, you want to,
right. Of
think
course.
and trust them, and then after a while, you start questioning yourself, like,
Yes.
do I even know what smoke smells like now?
Yes, it's true. I
Yeah,
mean,
like maybe I
you
am
know,
crazy.
that's the thing is that people don't understand it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't you're not gonna you might see some red flags, right away, if you are aware, but that doesn't happen overnight. You don't just turn into this person who's like, "Oh, I don't even know what cigarette smoke smells like." Well, no, you didn't turn into that person in one day. It was it's incremental, and they
Mhm.
call it a death by a thousand cuts.
Yeah,
It's just a tiny little bit. So, that I've talked about this on my podcast so many times is um, the frog in the pot of boiling water, right? They start the pot if the frog is in there when the water's cool, but then you keep turning up the heat and
mhm,
eventually it'll boil, but the frog doesn't jump out at the beginning. If you throw them in boiling water, yes, they jump out. But
yeah,
if you start them in cool water and it's comfortable, and then you start turning up the heat, and that's what happened to me. Why did I say 33 years? Frankly, I didn't even see it for about 29.
yeah.
Now hindsight is 2020. Now I can tell you everything and every lie, and I think back to things and I go, "Oh my god, that was probably a lie that he
Yeah.
was doing to manipulate me." It's sad, but anyway,
And then sometimes, and then you'll eventually tell yourself you don't want to upset them, so you're like, I'm just
yes.
not going to say anything.
Right,
And then
exactly.
there's hope that they're going to change,
Yes.
and
And
you
that's
hold
part
on
of
to,
the
and I think that's one reason why we stay in these relationships, because we hold on to that hope that,
yeah,
okay, tomorrow's going to be better, tomorrow's a new day,
yeah.
and it
And
just gets stuck in a
they
cycle.
might even get better for a minute. They might even do the thing that you've been wanting them to do. They might be different, they might behave differently, whatever it is, right? Do that nice thing. They treat you nicely, say the nice thing, buy you a nice present, and then turn around, and then that's for them it's like buying themselves time, because
Mhm.
then they will turn around. So those are breadcrumbs, and with the thing with breadcrumbs is that you can't live off of breadcrumbs, you'll starve,
Right.
and that's the most important thing. But that's how they hold on to you, and how they keep you hoping that they're going to change because, "Oh, look, it got better. They did the thing I wanted. They brought me roses for my birthday. They remembered my roses or my birthday this year," that kind of thing. But then
Right.
the next time they'll treat you like crap at the whatever, at the next thing.
You know, I used to start writing things down,
That's so
and
good.
I wish I would have done it more often. And
Yeah.
I would really start writing when things got really bad, because I
Yeah.
was trying to just clarify some of my thoughts.
Me too.
And I would go back and read some of the things that I wrote, and I was like,
I know.
I wish I would have kept a journal more often, and I could go back and be like, yeah, that's a breadcrumb, and I could see the pattern.
Yeah.
You know, so that maybe that's advice that we can give these listeners, is just
Oh yeah, for sure.
writing things down.
If you feel like something's wrong, so I started keeping what I called a therapy journal, so that when we would go to therapy,
Mhm.
I could say like, "He said this thing to me," but he always denied it. And I would be like, "Nope, I wrote it down." And he'd be like, "Nope, it doesn't matter." So now what you can so a couple of things there is I do advise that if you feel like there's a pattern that they're maybe breadcrumbing you, maybe they're lying to you, something, start writing it down. Even if you're doing bullet points real quick, you don't have to do journaling if you don't want to, though it's very therapeutic. And just think about the things that are happening
Mhm.
and like, is this what you want to be happening? You know what I mean? Like that they're constantly lying. There's going to be a question that you're going to have to answer there at some point. Is this the life I want to continue living if they're
Mm.
constantly lying? You may not know that they're lying right away, but you might
Mhm.
eventually see the pattern of that.
Right. So gaslighting, breadcrumbs, obviously
Yeah.
lying. Those are just some of
Yes.
their tactics.
Yes.
All right, so then let's fast forward to the abuse recovery and then go
Mhm.
into like some of the healthy boundaries.
Oh yeah. Well, the biggest boundary that is recommended after you leave an abusive relationship, if you can do it, like I have grown children, so I was able to do this. I went full no contact. He
Mm.
is not allowed to contact me unless we have a child that's in a life and death situation.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a life and death situation, but one of our kids did go to the hospital, and so I had to have a discussion with all three of my children and my ex and say, "Why didn't you contact me?" And he said, "Oh, our son said he would do it." And I was thinking, well, we haven't really set this boundary, but we had the discussion, and I decided that life and death is good. I asked my other grown children; they said only life and death. Do you need to communicate?
Mhm.
And I say that I asked my other kids is because two of them don't speak to their dad after finding out all the lies and everything. They've made that decision. They're grown. They've gone to therapy. That's their decision. And and I think that's pretty healthy if that's what they want to do for their life, for what feels good to them. But no contact was the best thing I ever did, because when you are on social media, if you're watching what they're doing, your brain is wanting a dopamine hit. And
Mhm.
every time you try to go to social media or text them, or, like give in to that urge to text them and say some nasty thing or whatever,
Mhm.
you get the dopamine hit, but then you're just going to be in a worse place. And so it's so hard, but full no contact is really recommended. And if you can't do full no contact, go no contact for as much as you can. And I
Mhm.
also unfriended all of his friends that we were mutual friends with, and I blocked him, and eventually the new girlfriend blocked me. And so
Mhm.
when she's posting about them, I can't see that. And so I don't know, that saved my sanity. Anytime I ever looked at his social media because I found a way to do it, it really hurt me and set me back.
And as much as you want to know, you don't.
No, you don't.
And for your own health, yeah, you just don't want to
That's
know.
your brain. That's your brain wanting a dopamine hit. That's all
Yeah.
it is. And you
Mhm.
have to, that's what I really recommend, is writing down all these things. Like remind yourself, okay, this is normal. And because people would have to say that to me, I'd say like, "Oh, this happened." And my daughter was like, "Okay, he's just love bombing her. You're okay. It's
Yeah.
he's not doing something more exciting with her because he loves her more. He's just love bombing her. And love bombing is just all the attention, love, everything you ever thought of, gifts, everything at the
Yeah.
beginning to really solidify the
Mhm.
new person into their
Right.
life so
Yeah.
that they seem like the greatest person ever."
Which is probably the same thing that he did with you.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
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 Mhm.
I
You look
look,
back and you're like, "Shit."
I for reals, but I will blame myself on not having a
Right.
full brain because
Yeah.
I was 22 years old. Look, I feel bad for 22-year-old Laura, but 56-year-old Laura, this is how she is, and she's learned
Yeah.
and grown, and now I can
Mhm.
help other people. But yes, it all happened to me. So when I was
Yeah.
hearing about him with his new girlfriend, I was like, "Oh, wow. I like the
Yeah.
pattern." I was telling people what was happening next, and they were like, "No, no, that's not going to happen." Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
It's like
You
they're
know
reading out of a textbook.
do you ever check your Facebook memories?
Of course I do every day, and every day I delete pictures because what the hell was I doing?
I know, and I read that post and I was like, but I mean, it's an example of that. The
Yes.
crazy love bombing in the beginning, the same thing that he's doing with her. I
Yes.
look back on my Facebook memories and I was like, my God,
Yes.
you
And
know?
it makes me sad because when I see pictures and I see the memories, I think I remember how I felt because a lot of people wanted me to remember the good times. And I will tell you why that doesn't work when you're in abuse. When you come out of abuse, remembering the good times is doesn't feel that great because in abuse, you were holding on to the little good parts.
Mhm.
Yes, we were at Disneyland with the family. Yes, I remember we were fighting in the middle of Disneyland. I
Right.
remember, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it's hard to go, remember those good times.
Mhm.
No, it's
Because
not that
because
easy.
yeah, what you remember is that when you look at that picture is, okay, afterwards, we all went out to dinner and we got into a fight because nobody could decide what to eat.
Yes,
And
exactly.
it ruined everyone's night because it set the pace
Yeah.
for the atmosphere and for that night.
Well, and even I would tell my son, who lives with me, he'll say like, "Mom, oh, that was a nice picture or whatever." I go, "Yeah, I'm deleting it because his new wife took it because we
Yeah.
were all friends." And so it's that kind of stuff that people don't
Yeah.
realize. People
Yeah.
don't realize what's behind the camera. And
Mhm.
listen, on Facebook, we're curating, and this is what this people have to hold on to this if they're suffering with this and they go and they check social media. Look, number one, don't be ashamed. We've all done it.
Mhm.
Don't be ashamed of that. But number 2, remember, we curate our life on social media. And
Yeah.
so what you're seeing is not I don't know if it's necessarily the truth. It's the good, and it's also
It's your highlight reel.
it's your highlight reel, it's the
Mhm.
facade. Because there were pictures I posted of me crying. Why? Because I wanted people to know that there's good and there's bad. There's good days and there's bad days. Because people are like, "Oh, Laura, you seem like you're doing so great." Yeah, there's days I still cry, not over him, but because it was 33 years and my brain is still unraveling it. It is a trauma. I
It
was in
is.
it for 33 years. I'm not getting over that tomorrow.
Mhm. Last night, I literally spent 2 hours in my bed just
Yeah.
my thing is worship music. If I can just play worship music and just
Yes.
close my eyes,
Love it.
that was me 2 hours last night.
Yeah.
I didn't wanna talk to anybody.
Yeah.
This morning I woke up and I'm fine and I'm on top of the world and nothing's bothering me.
Yeah.
So, but
You
it's
really you have to honor I mean, you really have to honor your body, right? And
yeah.
if you're feeling like that, there's no reason. I mean, and I do process it. I'll be like, "Okay, why are you sad? What's going on?" And then I can talk to myself and go, "This is normal. It's
Mhm.
okay. This is normal because something triggered me or whatever." Because my son and I were making enchiladas a month ago, and he said, "Red or green sauce?" And I said, "Okay, I really don't know because your dad always made us have green. I don't even know if I like red because
Right.
I wasn't allowed to buy red."
Yeah.
So it's little things like that. And so now you get to make the choice. I can do whatever I want. Did I still get green? Yes, because I actually like green.
Right.
And so,
Damn
you
it.
know what I mean? But it
You
was my,
almost wish you liked red.
I know. I there are some things that where I'm just like, no, I'm never eating that again, or I'm never doing that again because
Yeah.
there's too many memories, but that's okay.
Well, all right, so then let's start talking about that. Let's start talking about the phases. Like I
Yeah.
compare it to a death.
Oh,
My
for
dad
sure.
next
Yeah.
month it'll be 4 years.
Mhm.
And I remember just going through all these emotions, the
Yes.
sad, the mad, felt sorry for myself, the
Yeah.
angry, and going through all those emotions. And I feel myself going through those exact same roller coaster of emotions
I know, I'm telling you.
now.
It's really interesting, isn't it? And I have seen grief explained like a big ball of almost like a big ball of yarn or a big scribble on a page. It's not linear like we think. You don't go through this phase and then that phase. So my mom's actually been gone 4 years as well, and it's so weird because even the other day I was thinking about her. Now, I didn't cry as much as I have in the past. So
Hmm.
it's the same kind of thing. So somebody was saying that grief doesn't change, but our capacity to hold the grief changes.
That's
And
good.
so imagine that grief is like a ball, and no matter what you do, every little thing that, touches that grief button, and so you cry about oh, my mom did this, or my mom had that, or my ex this, or but
Hmm.
as we go through time, our capacity gets bigger, and so the grief button doesn't get touched as often. But
Right.
I have to say I was really surprised that I was going to be grieving. I thought I was walking out of my marriage going, "Yeah, I got rid of the
Yeah.
problem." And everybody's like, no, you're probably gonna grieve. And I was like, I am?
Mhm.
And I
Yeah, you
looked,
didn't it's like you didn't see it coming.
I didn't. I
Yeah.
don't know why.
I remember when, our situation, we actually after he asked for a separation, we lived together for 2 months because we
Yeah,
were in the process of selling our house,
yeah.
and we just stayed in different rooms. And there were several nights where I was just like, "I just need to lay with him."
Yes.
I know we're not gonna be together, but I just need to lay with him.
Yeah. We
And
can
I
talk
would
about
go
that.
yeah, we would go in there and, I would lay with him, and then that's all I needed.
Yeah.
Now, oh my I
Yeah.
bleh, couldn't even imagine doing that with him. But that was the phase that I was in back then.
Yeah, well, that's the trauma bond. So the trauma bond is that you actually have an affection for your perpetrator. And so, look, I get it. I did the same thing. I totally
Yeah,
get it. You know what I mean? Like even when I met up with him for something, I was screaming at him and then the next minute I was like, "Can I have a hug?" Because I was always bonded like that with him. He could
right.
be disciplining me, yelling at me, whatever, and I would go to him to soothe me.
Yes,
It's and so everyone has to know that that's very normal and you have to talk to your brain and say, "No."
right.
Stop.
And to recognize what it is, that's a
Yes,
trauma bond.
it's a trauma bond. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's horrible. I hated every second of it. It was really hard because I didn't understand how can I hold space for two things like that? How can I
yeah,
hate him and love him or hate him and miss him at the same time? And it's like
yeah,
and then I learned about the trauma bond and I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." I don't like it, but it makes sense.
right.
So,
Do you wanna talk about the angry phase?
what? I was never angry. What are you talking about?
Oh, that's where
Oh
I'm at.
my
I'm in
god.
the angry phase.
And what does that look like for you?
Just well, the positive about the angry phase is that it's very easy to go to no contact.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
I have no desire. I mean, I've blocked him on all social media.
Okay.
I have no desire to look at his or his girlfriend or anyone
Yeah.
that he's connected with.
Yeah.
I will say, and this is probably another subject, my in-laws, they're my family.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a whole another subject in itself. And I still talk to them and I'm
Okay.
still, I still see
We can definitely talk about that if you want to. I mean, because
yeah.
I have a different point of view.
But with him, I've blocked him everywhere. So the positive part of the angry stage, like I was
Yeah.
saying, is that I can go to good to no contact very easily. Now,
Yeah.
my situation, we're still connected when it comes to business, and then we have a
Okay.
son together.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
there's times where I do have to communicate with them,
Yeah.
but I've learned techniques that
Yeah.
helps me,
Yeah.
not get
Right.
not my anxiety doesn't go from here to here. And
Are you
so
using gray rock? Are you doing gray
I'm
rock?
using gray rocking.
Okay.
I have learned a little bit about yellow rocking, and then I've learned about compassionate detachment.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
That's too caring for me. I don't want to be caring.
I
I
know,
just
I'm
want to
telling
be
you.
yeah, I want to be just black and white with them. So I've learned techniques to help me deal with that.
Yeah.
And talking about those dopamine rushes,
Yeah.
I see a therapist, and she's taught me that when he does, because I have to contact him. We just have to communicate every once in a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
But when he does get me up there, she's taught me how to look at all my senses. She's like,
Okay.
Monica, light a candle that you like. Play
Yeah.
some music in the background that you like. Not loud enough where you can really hear it, but to where
Okay.
your brain has to concentrate on listening to that music.
Okay.
If you enjoy petting your dog, I'm a dog person. If you enjoy
Mhm.
petting your dog, the feeling of petting your dog,
Yeah.
um, things like that to give yourself little dopamine rushes will help get your anxiety from up here to down here.
Yeah.
The reason that I laid in my bed for 2 hours last night just listening to my worship music,
Yeah.
trying to bring it down because we
You
were
had
in
an
communication
interaction.
yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's so hard. So early on, okay. I walked out of the marriage and went full no contact and everything. And for about 3 months, I lived in ignorant bliss. That's what I call it.
yeah,
Ignorant bliss. 3 months. And I went to the beach and I was healing and I was journaling and I was praying and I was like, God, what do you think of me? And I was just having him like love me and heal
Yeah.
my broken heart. I would say that if you look at my journals, like when you were talking about your journals, I literally wrote, it was almost like I would pray. That's kind of what I like to do is journal and pray. And I
Hmm.
would say every time, God, heal my broken heart. Oh my God. Like, how many years do I have to ask this man before I sit there? Not this man, God, before
Yeah.
I'm sitting there looking at it going, Laura, there's a problem here that you keep asking God to heal your broken heart for this marriage that just never gets better. So I went to the beach and everything, because God lives at the beach. So I went to the
Right.
beach and I sat there. And then 3 months after my ignorant bliss, I found out by accident about his quote unquote new girlfriend. And I have to tell you,
His friend. His
his
friend.
just friend. She's
Yeah.
just a friend. She's just a
Hmm.
friend. He said she was just a friend for 7 years. I knew they'd end up together. That's one of the reasons why I went full no contact. Actually, I never even knew about this no contact thing. I didn't know this was a thing.
Hmm.
Instinctively, I was just like, I don't want to see it happening. And that's one of the reasons why, even though I love um some of my past in-laws, I don't care for some of them,
Hmm.
because his mother created a whole nest of narcissists. I didn't want to. I went no contact with them as well, and I said goodbye to them and thanked them for being good in-laws and whatever. And because I didn't want to see them getting together, and I just knew it was going to happen, so I had to break all contact. That was for my own sanity. It
Hmm.
was too many years, and I totally get that. Because also with the smear campaign behind the scenes, which is the narcissist may be talking about you behind the scenes, saying to everybody how terrible you are,
Hmm.
and maybe even saying like, Laura doesn't really like you, or Laura thinks you're didn't have a really good time last night, didn't have a really good time at your party or whatever. And
Hmm.
so all these things were happening behind the scenes anyway with my in-laws, and so they didn't like me anyway. There wasn't a way for me to get, through that. Well, when I found out about his girlfriend, I've never been so furious in my whole life. And I said to myself, I can see how women snap.
Yeah.
Um, but everyone said to me, well, don't do anything. I'm not going to anyway, because I'm not going to jail for anybody. But I did have to say no property damage and no bodily harm. That's what I would jokingly say to my friends who are like, let me go slash their tires or something. And I was like, no,
Did you put those on Post-it notes to remind yourself?
no,
Property damage. No.
I had to just keep saying it over and over,
Yeah.
because frankly, she's a new wife now, but the new wife, she thinks she won quite the prize. And you know what? I guess you did. I guess you won quite the prize.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. You
Yes.
know, that I've never been so mad. And so I just had to talk myself down. Listen, you got to find those good friends around you who will talk you off the ledge.
Right.
Because when I would say, like, I did send one or multiple in one day,
Hmm.
unbelievably vile text to them to let them know that I knew. And
Hmm.
then really I send it to my ex mostly. I'm not even gonna tell you what it was because it was so vile. But anyway, I'll tell you off camera. But anyway,
Did it feel good typing it though?
it
Sending it?
felt so good because
Mhm.
he came right back with a bunch of lies, and I was like, I don't believe you. I don't believe that you guys weren't together beforehand, because I've seen what I've seen in front of my face.
Yeah.
And so it felt good to get it out, but then I had to have friends around me going, okay, you're good. You don't have to do anything else.
Right.
It's okay, because you can get so mad that you will go to jail. Like,
Right.
don't do it. Like, no one's worth going to jail for. Seriously.
So I told completely agree with what you're saying. And I've got my little small group of friends. And also, when you go through something like this, you find out who your friends are.
Yes, for
Because
sure.
there's a lot of people that I thought would at least reach out to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about you, or
Yeah,
hope you're
yeah,
doing okay. Like not even looking for a response or, an extended interaction, but I didn't
yeah,
hear from them. So you find out really who your true friends are.
yeah, for sure.
So when I'm in those moments where my flesh wants to either
Yes.
call or text or email or whatever, I'll go ahead and type it out and I'll send it to my few friends. And it's a little joke. We either say, I second this motion, or this is not approved by management. But I'll type it.
I love that.
Yeah, I'll type it and it feels good, and then I'll delete it. And
Oh,
I'm over it. And I'm over it. Or sometimes
no,
I'll call them and I'll be like, okay, I'm not going to do this, but I'm going to talk about it. And I'll talk about it. And they're like, all right, are you done, Monica? I'm like, I'm done. Okay.
oh yeah. I mean, at the beginning when I found out, so my kids had known from the beginning because they were together from day one, which is
Yeah.
funny to me, if she was just coming over as a friend to, help him through the divorce. And my kids are the one who called him out and said, Dad, we know she's not just a friend.
Yeah.
Not to mention they knew who she was because I was very open I had cried about her for a long time. We had gone to therapy over her. And not only that, other women, because there is an emotional neglect from the mother, oftentimes there's a mother wound.
Hmm.
And so he had a really big need for women to really like him. And that was hard
Yeah.
because I felt really insecure. Now, he didn't try to not make me feel insecure. There's ways to do that. When you're in a marriage and your spouse is honoring you, taking care of you, saying, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to, and I would say, you flirt too much. And he would say, no, I'm sorry, sweetie. I won't do that anymore. But then the next time it happens again,
Yeah.
well, I'm not saying that I'm to blame for his behavior, but I allowed it because
Mhm.
again, I would say, you flirt too much. Oh, I'm so sorry. And then he'd do it again.
And it was a
So
pattern.
it was a pattern. And if you allow it, just imagine they're toddlers in an adult body and they're going to do what they want to do. They want what they want. You
Mhm.
cannot stop them. And so every time I said, can you stop? And he would say yes, but he wouldn't. And we just kept going through the pattern over and over and
Right.
over. I mean, and just so there's no way to say like, okay, well I'm to blame for that. No, there's no blame. It's that I allowed that to continue happening. And what I should have done was at some point stopped it.
Yeah.
And I did by leaving the marriage because my own trauma experience, and psychologists often say that if you have a past trauma, you can tell because you often try to convince people to treat you better rather than leaving the relationship.
Hmm.
And I did that. I did that for 33 years. Can you please treat me better? Yes, I
Right.
promise I will. And then he wouldn't. But then I'd say, can you please? Yes, of
Yeah.
course. And then we just go through the pattern again until one day I said, yeah, I'm all done with this pattern because I woke up.
And see, unfortunately, I never stopped. It took him asking me for a separation for me
Mm,
to get out of it. I don't know where I would be right now.
right.
I think that's something that we need to teach other women, if they don't already know this, is to look for those patterns. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize until after I got out of it that a mistake is a mistake. Okay, we can forgive a mistake, but when
Right.
that mistake is done over and over and over again, it's a choice.
It's a choice. Yeah.
It's a choice, and you know, I'm not down with forgiving stuff like that.
No, and that's the thing is that if you're intentionally hurting someone, like
Yeah.
constantly, intentionally. So that's not someone who loves you and who cares
Mm-hmm.
about you because they are intentionally hurting you. Because if I say stop and he says okay, and then he goes and does it again,
Mm-hmm.
like people often say, well, they don't know what they're doing. It's a disorder. Okay, yeah. But let me tell you how I know that they do know what they're doing. They don't abuse everybody.
Yeah.
They only abuse who they abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Because out in society, they're great. Everybody loves them. They're pillars of the community. They're volunteering. They're
Right.
great. Everybody, they have a lot. They may or may not have a ton of friends, but the friends they have love them and they're great. And at work, they're so great and everything.
They're the life of the party.
Yeah. And then at home,
Mm-hmm.
I'm being told that I'm too difficult or whatever the thing is. The hard part about trying to describe some of this stuff is that it sounds so minuscule, like, oh, he called you difficult. Well, no, imagine someone calling you difficult and a million other things for 33 years. It's not
Right.
easy. It's
All
not
the
easy. It's
Yeah.
all the time. You
Mhm.
can't live like that. I would say you're never on my side, or you never whatever, you never say these nice words to me or whatever. And he's like, well, it shouldn't matter what I say. You should just have self-esteem. And I would think that's just an excuse for you to be mean to me. And it
Mhm,
is true, because if your wife, who you apparently love, is saying, please stop treating me like garbage, and they continue treating you like garbage, that's a choice, because they're not doing that all the time everywhere. So
mhm.
that's a choice. You have to think about that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's so much. It's
Uh,
so much. I have a PhD at this point. Could do a 3-day seminar. I might have to.
so I'm just curious, what was your phase after your anger phase?
I think I got into okay, so I went from angry to righteous angry. This is
Okay.
the only way I can describe it.
Yeah.
I started getting help in the community. And I I one of the things that was happening where people were asking me to, not asking me, they were telling me I should forgive him and move on. And
Yeah.
then also saying, "Are you sure that happened to you?" Okay. And that's secondary gaslighting, so that's another
Mhm,
phase. And then also I was in a church recovery kind of group for divorce, and I had a discussion with the group afterwards, the national group, because I
mhm,
said, the church is woefully unprepared for abuse. We didn't even discuss it. And so I went into like a righteous anger of like, we're not looking at the abuser. We're only worrying about the people who are abused,
mhm,
and thinking like, oh my gosh, you shouldn't be talking about this. I started making videos on social media, kind of talking about my experience. And this was the predecessor of my podcast, because I started talking about it and people started saying, oh my gosh, that happened to me. That happened to me. That happened to me.
right.
And
Yeah.
so I found a tribe of people who were around me who were like, I didn't think anybody else was going through this, because
Right.
that's exactly how I felt. I felt unbelievably alone and
Yeah.
sad, and I just felt so misunderstood.
Mhm.
I didn't
And
understand
I
why.
think part of us almost we almost want to don't admit to it.
Oh yeah, it's embarrassing, isn't it? I
It
mean,
is.
it's kind of
Yeah.
it's embarrassing. Divorce in and of itself is not easily tied up in a little bow.
Mhm,
And I think it's really sad. And but the whole thing was so like devastating to me,
mhm,
that this was all happening. And the things I was hearing was the institution of marriage seemed to be more important than what happened to me or what he was doing.
yeah.
um, some people don't call psychological abuse abuse, even though it's psychological abuse, and it's
Yeah.
actually something. There's Stockholm syndrome, there's things like that. He
Mhm,
didn't have to physically hit me for it to not be abuse. And but some people don't see that. And so I felt like I was trying to convince people of my abuse. And I'm like, I'm not going to convince people, but I found my tribe of women who said
right.
this happened to me too. And so we can talk about it, we can build awareness, and
Mhm.
we can help other people. And that's kind of where my podcast started. It started from righteous anger. I went from angry
So,
to righteous
right to
angry.
saying I love it. So were you accused of being the victim, having that
Yeah.
victim mentality?
Yeah. You
That like,
know, it's hard because sitting in this divorce group, they're like, you got to think about what you brought to the marriage and what caused the divorce. And I'm sitting here thinking, I've been sitting in abuse for 33 years, and someone just asked me to look at what I did wrong, and I got real sassy about it. I go, "Oh, well, I let him have a girlfriend. I let him treat me like garbage. I let him do this. I let him do that. Are those the things you mean when you
yeah,
say like what did I do wrong?" So, Dr. Ramani actually came out with a book recently. Dr. Ramani is like really like one of the top people in
right.
narcissism.
It's not you.
It's not you.
Yeah, I
You
just
can
got
get
it.
healed from
Mhm.
the title. Go ahead and get healed from the title. It's not
Yeah.
you.
Yep.
Because that's the thing is I'm not saying I was perfect. Never one day will I say I was perfect. But when you kick a dog all the time, they're gonna bite you. And
Right.
so this is the thing is that you can't just sit here. I didn't walk out of a marriage that had equal partners. I
Mhm.
didn't have an equal partner because trolls all the time on my socials are like, "What did you do to try and save the marriage?" I'm like, "Well, feel free to listen to my, 100 podcasts I've put out, but
Yeah.
I've done lots of things." But if you don't have two partners who are willing, doesn't matter. We have free will, and he chose to do what he wanted. It doesn't matter how much God is covering anything, right? Because if we have free will, my ex chose what he wanted to do, and
Mhm.
that was not be in this marriage. Frankly, I would have stayed forever. I'm not even ashamed to admit that. I would have stayed forever thinking he's gonna get better one day.
He's gonna he's gonna change.
He's gonna change.
Uh,
God, I was brain damaged.
so
That's how I feel.
obviously he knows about the book that you wrote. He
I have
knows
no
about
idea.
the podcast.
I don't know if he
So
does.
you haven't heard anything about,
If
has he
not.
tried to contact you about, don't do this?
Okay, so he only said one thing to me one time, but this was right after I found out about the girlfriend, and I said, "I wanna talk," because I wanted to make him say to me, "Yeah, I should have divorced you. Yeah, we've been together for a long time." I wanted him to admit it. He never did, because liar's gonna lie.
Yeah.
Narcissist will lie till he'd probably lie right now, and they are physically married, okay? So, he said, "I heard you're calling me a narcissist." And I just looked at him and I said, "Yep, that's it." That was my conversation. He's
Mhm.
like, "Well, I guess if that's what you wanna do on social media." I go, "Wow, thanks for giving me permission to do whatever I want in my life." No, that's the thing, no. No, that's he still continued to talk to me because we had contact for a couple of months after that.
Yeah.
Talk to me like we were married, and he talked to me like that all the time. He was rude all the time to me, and one time, we
Mhm.
met in public, and he actually spoke really rudely to me in public, and I just sat there doing gray rock. So gray rock is just you don't react, and you
Yeah.
just whatever his question was, I said, "Yes,
Mhm.
no," whatever it was, and then when he's like, "Are we done?" I said, "Yeah,"
Yeah.
and then he walked out. But he never spoke that way to me in public, and I'm sitting here thinking, "Man, he thinks we're still married or something because I don't he's talking to me so rudely." So, he knew I was making videos before. This was before the podcast. Have no idea. He's not blocked on Instagram, so if he wants to watch, he can.
Uh, Well, I've blocked mine on everything, but like obviously my YouTube and all
Mhm.
my podcast platforms. I mean, he's welcome to listen.
Yeah, exactly, and it's so funny because when I
He's welcome to listen.
when I was on Instagram and I started my, podcast Instagram, so
Yeah.
that was different, right? That was different than my regular Laura Instagram, and Instagram suggested I follow him on Instagram, and I was like, "What the heck, Instagram? Why would you do this to me?"
Yeah.
So I went in, I found him and her, and I blocked them, and then I thought to myself, "Nah, they can watch me," and so I unblocked them.
Right.
So I have no idea. I didn't follow them or anything,
Yeah.
but my account is public. I have no idea. Knowing him as much as I could know him because he
Mhm.
was a liar, he would never come at me for anything. He's too busy living his new life, so it doesn't matter. And I never say his name. It doesn't matter what his name is.
Yeah.
Insert
I
your
don't, yeah,
narcissist
I don't
here.
use mine either. And, obviously people that know us can put two and two
Right.
together. But,
Yeah.
mine, like you said, he was acting like y'all were still married. So I'm kind of
Yes.
going through that a little bit too. Like
Yes.
very demanding, very,
Yeah.
definitely very, what word do I use? Judgmental, and
Yeah.
gives me his 2 cents about Glitch Mob podcast.
I love that. Like we care because you know
Yeah,
what?
I don't. I mean, honestly, the way I see it is like you're giving me content right now.
It's so true.
You're giving me
I am
content right now.
It's so true. And the thing is, look, I've been out of it for 18 months and that I can laugh about it like this. I'm really proud of myself. And you have to really build yourself up on when you get to a part where they say something to you and you can gray rock or you don't react,
Right,
or maybe you lay in bed for 2 hours where you may have laid in bed for a day instead before. Okay.
right.
Give yourself grace and give yourself
Yes.
props for that and say like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, I would get out of bed and go like, you're doing a great job today. And I would be in the mirror, you're doing great. You got out of bed. I'm so proud
Right.
of you. You know,
Yeah.
because it was horrible. I mean, it was horrible especially at the beginning when I found out because I just knew it was going to happen. That was the most painful thing. I felt like I started over in my healing and
Mhm.
I saved a reel yesterday. Somebody was talking about it and I want to go back and listen to it because it really felt like I started over in my healing. I was
Yeah.
so mad at him for that because I felt like, oh my God, I started over. And everybody knew I didn't want to know about them. And someone told me by mistake. She didn't mean to. She
Yeah.
told me by mistake. She goes, oh, you know about so and so and so and so. And I was like, no.
Mhm.
I did not know. Oh my God. My brain, I didn't sleep for I think 3 days. Like I literally was having nightmares. It was
Yeah.
horrible. Anyway, so in that time, do not don't go do anything.
Right.
Like literally don't do anything.
Yeah.
Go find your
Get it approved by management.
yes. Yes,
And
exactly.
like in my situation, I spent so many like talking about like the lying and the cheating and the
Yeah, yeah.
patterns. You spend so much time trying to forget.
Yeah.
Like say something happens and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
tomorrow's gonna be a better day.
Yeah.
And you try and forget about yesterday. And then next week you try and forget about what like you spend so much time trying to forget what happens. But
Yeah.
now that you're out of it, like I'm out of it,
Yeah.
I'm actively like remembering, oh my
I
God,
know.
he did this and he did this and I allowed this. And
Yeah.
and that's another reason why I'm in the angry phase right now.
Yes. And unfortunately, when you're okay, so when you're in abuse, you are in such survival mode that you actually
Yeah.
don't have any clarity. You may have had a foggy brain or where
Mhm.
you think like, I can't remember, I can't remember things, I can't make choices, stuff like that. Well,
Mhm.
that was part of it. They manipulated you so much that maybe you couldn't even make a choice. I remember not being able to make choices because if I paused that was wrong. And if I said
Yeah.
yes, that was wrong. And if I said no, that was wrong. I mean, all the things were always wrong. So when you're out of abuse, you actually start getting clarity.
Right.
And that's why, oh my gosh, I wasn't crying, but I shocked myself yesterday. My brain actually remembered one of my boyfriends from high school. And I said, because look, I had a pattern.
Mhm.
I had a need. I had a want. I wanted to be loved. And if you were my boyfriend, then I gave you my all and don't treat me poorly. And then I had boyfriends who went off with other women or other girls or whatever. And I'm just like, my God. And I was remembering something that happened to me when I was 16. I was like, what the hell? Like brain, why are you remembering this? Because I have clarity. And so my brain is working out. But I mean, don't sit there and go into a pity party necessarily. It's like, oh, I'm so terrible. No, just learn
Mhm.
why did you do that? Learn your pattern and
Mhm.
grow out of it, or you're going to do it again. What
Mhm.
if you don't learn from this, you're going to do it again. I don't want to do this again. No, thank you. So
And-
I'm not actually dating and I'm taking my time on even thinking about that because it's too I want to make sure I'm pretty healed, but I want to make sure I'm okay.
Right. And I think, that's a good point to make is that even when we're younger, before we even get into our first marriage,
Yeah.
we owe it to our whoever your other partner is going to be, is to fix yourself and to heal from
Yeah.
any childhood trauma, from any past
Everything.
marriages. That's
Yeah.
why it cracks me up is what it does is when a couple separates and
Mhm.
or divorces, because I know Las Vegas, their laws are, I mean, you guys can get divorced just like that.
And you
State
can
of
get married
Virginia,
just like that. Yeah, you can just
yes.
get married and divorced really quick. Yeah.
State of Virginia, you have to wait a year.
Yeah.
Um, but in our case, we were together for 13 years.
Yeah.
There's healing from that.
Yeah.
So for someone to jump into a relationship right after that,
Yeah.
you're doing it a disservice.
You really are because you're going to go into the same pattern and then what you're going to find is you may find yourself and I've had people on my podcast talking about this. They said, "Well, I wanted to go through his phone and I wanted to like he'd get up from the table and I wanted to go through his phone." And they're talking about their new partner after their marriage.
Hmm.
And they're like they had to tell themselves, "That's not my ex.
Yeah.
This new partner hasn't done anything to break my trust, etc." But if
Mhm.
you don't heal that part, you're still going to have that leftover baggage.
Mhm.
And I don't want to. And so I I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm okay in lots of ways, but
Mhm.
then enchilada sauce comes up and then I gotta
Right.
think about it.
Damn it.
I stop in my tracks in the kitchen going, I don't know.
I know. And and to circle back to what you were saying just a second ago about you going to survival mode,
Yeah.
and you'll do anything for relief. And if your relief is
Yes.
to pack that memory down and forget it happened and to
Right.
forgive them, even though it was a pattern, you forgive them, give them a hug, lay with them or whatever. If that's what's going to give you relief,
Yeah.
that's what you do when you're in survival mode.
Right. It's so crazy, isn't it?
It
And
is.
it just it makes me sad to think about that, but that's why, and you can't, I don't know, you can't beat yourself up about it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. There were lots of good things I did and lots of bad things I did at the beginning just to get that relief. But I think that this is what I say through a lot of my videos is keep yourself safe by keeping yourself educated.
Hmm.
So if you educate yourself and know this is a pattern, this is going to happen next. Because I said they're going to get together, they're going to get engaged by this many months, they're going to be married by this many months because that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
It's a narcissistic pattern. He did
Hmm.
it to me, he will do it to her. When I and so if you know the patterns, you know that this isn't about you and you're going to be okay and you know what's going to happen next. Hold on, get really good trauma informed therapy. Talk to friends who have been through this,
Hmm.
do whatever is really good for you and really get the dopamine, serotonin, all that
Right.
in good places, like
Mhm.
get sunlight. Look, treat yourself like a houseplant. Water and
Yep.
sunlight.
Right. Yeah.
Seriously.
Hmm.
And get outside, but also exercise because that's going to give you that dopamine rush that you
Hmm.
need, that you want so badly from checking social media or something like that, because
Yeah.
it's so tempting, but it's gonna hurt. I'll just tell you right now, it will hurt. No
Right.
matter how long it's been, it'll hurt.
That's talking about exercise. That's another area that I want to start diving into is
Yeah.
I'm starting to read a lot about somatic exercises.
Yes, me
So I'm
too.
hoping to get somebody on my podcast to talk about that and how that helps you out in the healing. But that's why I call them glitches.
Right.
Like over all these years, I've just created all these little glitches in my mind.
Yeah.
And right now I'm just in the process of just trying to fix all those glitches,
Right.
educate myself and give myself healthy boundaries.
Yes. That's
So
all
it
you
does,
can do, right? That's all you can do. We've all learned from our past experience. Everything we've gone through, we've learned, become this person.
right.
But that doesn't mean we have to stay there. People who say, well, that's just the way I am. Actually, that's not just the way you are. You actually can change and you can learn and grow and
Hmm.
know your patterns and what do you want for your future.
Hmm.
And you don't have to stay even in a toxic, say, family relationship. If your family is toxic and that's what's holding you back, you might consider healing that part of you, because maybe that's what's stopping you, that's why you're making these choices, because we all have a pattern, we all do it for a reason. You may not know what it is, but I just did some inner child work and pulled something out from when I was 10, and it was great, and it came
Yeah.
out, it was great, I figured it out, great, now I can move on. And so it if people don't think that really helps, it sure does, because
Right.
now I know the why I did the things I did.
Hmm.
It was something that happened when I was 10. Okay, so
Right.
now I move on and I keep going to therapy. There's always something to unpack because some crappy thing happens or some trigger comes up or something. And, she's there to help me unpack it. But then I also like doing coaching because coaching helps you really move forward into your goals and dreams.
Right.
And so I do both of those. It's
And
really
it can be overwhelming, it can be very overwhelming. And, where do I start and all that? And,
yeah.
I really like that you wrote your book, There is Hope,
Thank you.
because it's simple and
Yeah.
it's actually, I think it's a good place to start.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was
Yeah.
I wanted to give people 52 keys to healing
Yeah.
if you can think of nothing to do, because frankly, I felt like my brain was like fried.
Yeah.
because you really don't have clarity when you have this brain fog. And so I was like, what do I do? How do I heal? Well, it'll give you some ideas of something to try that will
Mhm.
give you some ways to heal. And it's really good for anybody, even if you haven't been divorced. So
Mhm. And it's not elaborate. It's just these little
yes,
keys that you can,
that's what I
you know,
wanted to do. Yeah, I'm
leave it,
writing the
leave it on your
bigger one, but
nightstand. You're writing another
I'm
one. Is that
gonna
what you
write a
said?
bit. Yeah, I'm writing a longer one, but that one was the first one. I just wanted to get it out there to give something for people to look at and go, what do I
Right.
do today? How do I heal today? Well, open it up and pick one.
I love that. Well, can we end by you giving like a good piece of advice, and then
Sure.
also how people can get a hold of you?
So my biggest advice is learn how to set healthy boundaries and love yourself.
Right.
Because the ultimate act of self-love for me was setting healthy boundaries, and that's really changed my life. And
Mhm.
but self-love is the biggest thing. You got to love yourself and give yourself some grace because it
Right.
takes a lot of work. It's okay. We're all a work in progress. It's okay. And everyone can find me at that's where I'm at podcast.com. You'll be able to find all the links, all the resources. I have tons of resources and just all my links for my podcasts and my books and everything else. So that's where
Great.
they can find me.
Well, I truly enjoyed talking to you today, and I still feel like there's so many other topics
I
that
know.
we could touch on, but maybe we'll get together again
Okay,
and
sounds good.
touch on those.
We'll do
So,
something.
all right, thank you.
Thanks, Monica. I appreciate it.